Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Buffalo Bills Maybe Next Year, the podcast that prepares really, really hard leading up to game day and tries to work to make sure that we can put together one good segment after one good segment after one good segment. But inevitably, it's three good statements and out. And that pretty much defines this podcast. So without further ado, I'm Paul.
I'm Scott.
I'm Frank.
Yeah, I was debating how to frame that, but the whole point is like, man, you hear all week the offense is first of all, we'll initially start, of course, recapping what happened on Sunday with the Bills. What was it, 20-13? I think was the final score of that loss to the Texans. I tried to blank out the actual final score, but boy, from a perspective of the offense had an extra day of practice on Monday, they didn't get the day off. They prepared, and then they seem to have things under control. And then we've got to come up with a nickname for do we call it the Peterman effect? Do we call it the Peterman hypothesis? There's something to describe the phenomenon. Maybe it's a phenomenon almost. The Peterman phenomenon.
It sounds like an episode of The Big Bang Theory. If you've ever looked at their show titles, they're all vaguely scientific like that. Anyway, sorry.
Right. Well, the Bills' offense is also vaguely scientific, I would say.
Theoretical physics.
Right. It's collapsing into a black hole ever so quickly. I think that is the point I was driving at.
It's so untalented that it actually is collapsing the talent of the defense around it and sucking it in on itself.
This is actually perhaps the most devious plan to defeat the Patriots ever, is to simply suck all of their talent into the black hole when they play them, and basically trap Tom Brady forever in the event horizon.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I'm sure ESPN is licking their chops for their Monday night game in 2 weeks with Tom Brady against either Nathan Peterman or Derek Anderson, more than likely. So
or streak quarterback.
Yes. What's Matt Castle? What's Kyle Orton? Can he unretire? Who else could be?
Colin Kaepernick's had a hard time finding a job.
Oh, we went there.
That would be incredibly awesome if the Bills signed Colin Kaepernick and started him on Monday Night Football against Tom Brady. I think the world would collapse on itself. That's a black hole.
Yeah, everyone drank.
The truly part would be to sign Colin Kaepernick and then still start Nate Peterman.
Yes, exactly.
Somehow Vontae Davis is going to start this game at quarterback for the Bills. That's where it's going. So, all right, we won't stray too much further from the Texans game. Frank, we'll start with your thoughts. I'm just going to give you a blank slate. Bills, Texans, go.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I didn't watch the game live except for the last 2 minutes where I was in the car and I got the update that it was I guess it would have been 13-10 Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got back home and it was 20-13 and Nate Peterman was trying to lead them down the field. And I knew that Allen had left the game. But in reviewing both the stat sheets and kind of the highlights of the game, I think that what shouldn't be lost in this abysmal game is what really was a really good game by the defense. I mean, easily 7 points aren't their fault, if not really kind of 13 by the time we talk about blocked punts and other nonsense. So, they really sort of held Houston's offense to 6 points. They couldn't just about barely do anything, given, Deshaun Watson, obviously 177 yards, but 2 picks, sacked 7 times. I mean, they couldn't stop the Bills' pass rush. And so it's doubly disappointing to sort of have that happen. That said, I think that the lesson to take away here is this. You can't win football games reliably this way, right? Like, how much better was the defense going to play? You've got your running backs, and if you can't pass the ball, you weren't going to win the football game. Now, if Josh Allen stays in the game, if Nathan Peterman doesn't throw a devastating pick six, like if they just are more cautious with the ball, like it might have been one of those times where it would have been better to simply just, you have the lead, and even if you have to run it for 7 minutes, the defense was playing well enough. I might have trusted them to do that. So really a failing in my mind, not just of the offense, but kind of the coaching staff. And what I know we will get to later is a truly like this is the DEFCON 5. I think that's the worst one. It's the other way. So this is at least DEFCON 2 if it's not DEFCON 1 for the team in the front office. This is both the exact awful wrong thing that Scott predicted could happen did happen, and all of their chickens coming home to roost because Nathan Peterman was the only other quarterback on the team. But I guess I will reiterate, I don't want a good game by the defense lost in what was a truly horrific game otherwise. And I'll let Scott get his thoughts in.
So I didn't listen to anything Frank said. I spent most of my time thinking about last week, how I said, credit the coaching staff for figuring out a way to win close games. And yet here we are, managing to get a 3-point lead with 10 points left, with 10 minutes left, and idling away and managing to not managing, but specifically throwing the game away on the arm of one young Nathan Peterman. It was funny. I was doing the Gamecast thing, and I was like, "Oh, Peterman's in. Oh, that's terrible." And then, excuse me, he threw the touchdown, and I'm like, "Oh," because I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but like that was one more touchdown than Josh Allen had thrown that day,
right?
I mean, and really, for the last like 2-3 weeks, that's more than one touchdown than Josh Allen's thrown. But then, of course, he ended up Petermaning it later. So, QB controversy avoided. Step one. Bigger problem, we have no quarterbacks on the roster. So, yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Frank. Obviously, again, like a really good effort by the defense. I don't want to get too high on it just because it was the Texans, who are not kind of, like traditionally going to be kind of a team that we're really going to be thinking like that's a playoff team, no doubt. But hey, a win's a win for them on the defense, in the sense that this wasn't actually a win, but they played well. So they played well. I can't think of where that gets us to. But anyway, I think, yeah, it was a good effort by the defense. We can go into the special teams. Another terrible day on special teams. Pretty much cost us, I think, 10 in the block field goal and the
we lost. We've temporarily lost Scott. Oh. He tends to rebound. There he is. He's coming.
Sorry.
Back.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I thought I heard you guys fade out, which is weird. Anyway, the special teams also lost us at least 10 points, right?
Probably? Yes.
Oh yeah.
I was saying that between the offense and the special teams that they blew the game, not so much the defense. And again, that has to go to the coaching staff as well, because again, we knew these were problems that needed to be fixed, and there's only so many kind of great individual performances on defense that will let you kind of win these games. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if Josh Allen wins this game if he stays in there, because even the way he was moving the ball, I don't think we're going to score a touchdown, even with the field position that Peterman had and eventually turned into the touchdown. Even if we get 3 points out of that and we don't turn the ball over the rest of the game, I still don't know that's enough to win the game. So, it's tough to do hypotheticals, but I don't know. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, some good points you both raised. And one thing that you had said, Frank, is that, you just can't consistently win football games this way, which goes to Scott's Facebook comment on this game, which was essentially, how did they lose? Oh yeah, 229 yards on offense. So it's not a sustainable recipe for success. And Scott did point out last week, hey, they found a way to win games. And yes, they can occasionally win games like this. There is no doubt that they can. But when you have the special teams let you down like they did, the blocked punt, the big returns, even the underrated aspect of after the pick six, when the Texans player, I forgot who was, went and humped Kelvin Benjamin in the end zone, and the Texans got a 15-yard penalty and punted or kicked off from their 20, the Bills managed to flub that kickoff and get tackled at their 12. So really a complete special teams failure, and I don't want to lose touch of that. I do blame, starting with special teams, I definitely blame the coaching. I want to start with special teams because I think they're the most overlooked problem with the game. I think it was a bad coaching week. I still have general faith in Danny Crossman, one, because it's just one game, and two, the fact that he seems to survive one coaching regime after the other indicates to me that he must actually be fairly good at his job. And the Bills have ranked very highly in special teams generally over the years. But whatever he did this past week, he did not have them focused, and that certainly falls squarely on coaching, as Scott noticed. Offensively, I mean, nothing was good about the game. I defended Dable the last week after rebounding from a bad Packers game. His plan this week was uninspiring. You might have heard seen the video of Jerry Hughes coming off the field at the end of the game and cursing about, practicing all week and running jet sweep after jet sweep or something along those lines. So he was clearly annoyed with the offense's inability to help out a defense that had to do. Even mention the number of sacks. Wasn't it 7 sacks?
Yeah, I did. They sacked them 7 times and 2 picks. And so
7 sacks, 2 picks, three takeaways total. And yet this is a game you end up losing. And now you look at the pass interference calling Gaines at the end. I think it was legitimate. I was a little bit frustrated because, one, you could have called an uncatchable ball, and two, if Gaines turns around, that's either an interception or incompletion. All he had to do was turn around. It was not a well-thrown ball that if he didn't interfere with the guy, it was going to be caught. So that was frustrating. But then the defense, with a 1st and goal at the 1, ends up pushing the Texans back and back to make them settle for a field goal. And the only area I want to differ – I don't know if I differ with Scott on this. I think I agree. He said that, if Josh Allen's in there, we're still not sure if the Bills win this game. I would agree with that. I would say, however, that I don't see him throwing that pass to the flat that gets pick 6. And I think if he does, he throws it so blisteringly hard, it misses everybody. I don't think, I think it ends up being just an incompletion. So I think the Bills could have lost differently, maybe if they had, if Peterman had not been in there, but all in all, I mean, not too much to add to the general narrative. Special teams was terrible. Don't overlook that. The offense has been, I read a statistic, and this is not incorrect. The Bills' offense is now the 2nd worst ever when you based on the advanced stats going back to 1986. So 2004 Dolphins, we're coming for you to be the worst offense in history. So that was, the offense was bad. And the defense, you really hope they're 3rd in DVOA right now. You hope they keep it up. They've got some big challenges ahead. The Bills can still win some football games with this defense, but in order to be a championship contending type team, this offense needs to get fixed really quickly. And speaking of championship contending type teams, let's talk about the quarterback position, and specifically the performance of the quarterback who took over for Josh Allen in this game. We'll start with Scott this time since we started with Frank before. This is kind of a separate topic, but let's face it, it's related to the Texans game, related to some overall impressions of the team. So like I did with Frank, the opening segment, Scott, I'll just say, Nathan Peterman, go.
Yeah. So let's talk briefly about Nathan Peterman. I guess, like, if I'm bringing him in and I'm the coach, this is what I'm telling Nathan. Nathan, I really like you. And that's probably what McDermott's saying. Okay. I really like you. I think you're going to be a great QB coach one day, maybe a great maybe even a great head coach. You can't play in the NFL, so we're cutting you. Please leave. Like, it's a pretty short conversation. Like, he is not a great quarterback at all. He is not even a good quarterback. He's not an average quarterback. He's a bad quarterback. He is a quarterback that makes me want to have, like, Kelly Holcomb play, which is not something I thought I'd ever say. I
hear the Bills have signed him just now.
Yeah. I think I'm struggling for the words to describe how bad he is. I think it's also frustrating. It's probably more frustrating because the only people who don't think this are apparently Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. Like, they're the only 2 people who don't get this. I'm pretty sure most of the team doesn't get this. I'm pretty sure the owner doesn't get why he's still on the team. So it's really just 2 guys. And I guess as it's one of those things, like, as long as you're making your boss happy, I guess that's all you need to worry about. Clearly Nathan Peterman's doing that, but I don't know how he didn't just get left at the airport on the flight home from Houston. Like, sorry, Nate, Here's some money for the bus. You know, take it somewhere else. Take it anywhere but Buffalo. That's all we got for you. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's not really fair to him because he clearly is in over his head a little bit, and we're putting him in positions where he can't succeed. And to a certain extent, we already did that with Josh Allen. We've invested far more in him, and that's a separate conversation. But certainly at this point, we're not helping Nathan Peterman by making him the backup quarterback, and we're certainly not helping the team. So I don't know why we're doing this.
My thoughts are, God damn it. Nathan Peterman, look, I was, as much as anybody, honestly, like after last year's debacle, willing to say that, you know what, someone had to have the worst game that a quarterback ever had. And maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just one bad game and they want to keep him around and he's a cheap option, and that's fine because they've drafted Josh Allen. The moment they drafted Josh Allen, okay, Nathan Peterman's future with the team basically was obsolete. Okay, at best, he was going to be a backup quarterback because you had invested in the guy. The guy was there now. It's remarkable to me that even if he won the offseason, that this team thought it was okay to go into the season with the guy who had the worst quarterback performance ever as a quarterback in one game and a rookie. And this is exactly all of their chickens coming home to roost, because they've had weeks now since the Baltimore game. The Baltimore game wherein they decided Nate Peterman cannot play. Okay, they've had 5 weeks to go and find somebody else. Derek Anderson was available in week 2. Now, I guess I don't ultimately know whether they reached out to him and he said no and they finally gave him whatever he wanted. But we've had weeks where we tried to skate by with just Josh Allen and Nathan Peterman. And so the fact that we're going into next week, the reason we haven't cut Nate Peterman is because he's literally the only quarterback who's been here longer than 4 days and is physically fit to play, is entirely Brandon Beane's making. And it's also Sean McDermott's making. I've said before that I'm not sure that those two guys are on the same page on quarterback. I can't believe that that Beane hasn't put his foot down and said enough is enough with this guy. There's no reason to develop him. There's no sense in developing him. No one's trying to develop him. He's like Derek Anderson with no experience. He's worse than Derek Anderson because Derek Anderson is stuck around for 13 years. And we are in a position where literally they might have to start him on Sunday because there's no one else. And I'll tell you right now, like, we're going to probably talk more about Josh Allen in a minute. I've got a really fun stat about the Bills offense. And also I'll get to my Josh Allen points then, but relatedly, if Nathan Peterman or Derek Anderson is going to be doing some extended starting for this team, my interest level in 2018 goes down precipitously. And any and all momentum from a playoff season and a rookie quarterback is out the window. And I feel like McDermott and Beane should be on hot seats already if they're not, because this mess is entirely of their making. And the last thing I will say about Nathan Peterman is I guarantee you Nathan Peterman is Mr. fucking culture in that locker room. He's the king of culture. I guarantee you he prepares the right way, and he's a McDermott guy through and through, and blah, 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 changing the culture and getting, trust. He is just branded with trust the process on his limp arm that he throws with. And that's exactly what trust the process will get you if you don't also identify talent. And so that could be really the harbinger, the standard bearer for everything that will go wrong with this team going forward, is that they will believe they can have a bunch of scrappy do-gooders that can't play and somehow Rudy their way into a Super Bowl. So to reiterate originally, gosh damn it, because I feel like I probably shouldn't have brought all-powerful beings into this conversation to begin with. But it's a nightmare. He's a nightmare. Everything about this season is now a nightmare.
Yeah. Listen, Buffalo Bills. I get it. You know, Nate Peterman beat Clemson. You can't ignore that. It was November 2016. He was the offensive player of the week in college. He had 5 touchdowns and 0 picks, 308 yards, and Clemson was unbeaten, number 2 in the nation. So yeah, you draft a guy. You draft a guy in the 5th round. You take a flyer on him. I totally get that. And let's talk about, Frank had used the term king of culture. Now, creating a winning culture, to me, and I think this is my understanding of the McBean process as well, creating a winning culture is twofold. Number one, you have players who work hard every day. They prepare and they have a team-first attitude going into every single practice, every single situation, and that professionalism rubs off on everyone around you. 2, those players can then go out on Sunday, execute what was practiced, and contribute to the team winning football games. I have zero doubt, zero at all, in Nathan Peterman's ability to do number 1. In fact, I think he probably does that continuously.
I'd like to just quickly say that in doing number 1, I feel like he does number 2 all over the field.
He number 2.
Stepped on your joke.
No, and I'm glad. I had another joke coming up, but that did not step on it. So as I said it, I'm like, so good. Frank can jump in with a poop joke, and he did. So way to not let me down. So that to me is part of the process. Now, 4 times Nathan Peterman has faced what I would consider a pressure situation, thrown into his first NFL start against the Chargers, having to come in for the Jags playoff game in the 4th quarter down a touchdown. The Ravens season opener this year, his first time starting a season as an NFL starting quarterback. And then this game where he comes in, puts the team in the lead briefly, makes a nice play, but then it gets tied. What does he do? All 4 of those, he has then just totally destroyed, what has been done in those situations. 5 interceptions in 1 half against the Chargers. The Jags game, he stumbled his way to a first down, literally, while scrambling, then took an intentional grounding, then threw a game-ending pick. Ravens opener, the less said the better. This game, pick 6, followed by the closing deal, pick off. Both of those inside the last 2 minutes of the game. If you want to build a winning culture in your locker room, you must place an emphasis on accountability. And as long as Peterman is in there, it's not going to happen. You cannot have a winning culture when you have a Nathan Peterman in the locker room. So, they talk about process and process. You know what else is processed? Spam. And you know what? You can get through a meal eating spam, but if you have it every day, you're going to die painfully. And that is what is going to happen with the Bills at quarterback. Is Nathan Peterman is like eating spam day in and day out. So if this all the way seems like my aggravation is directed at Nathan Peterman, it's not. It's directed at McBean and the team. And, they've created this mess. And as Frank pointed out, they haven't had another quarterback who's been on the roster for more than 1 week because they dumped McCarron. If they have A.J. McCarron, I have a feeling we're talking about a win in a 3-3 team going on the road to face a limited Colts team and a possibility of going 4-3 into a big Monday Night Patriots game. Instead, the only thing of interest I can find after this game is I read an article that if Tom Brady throws an interception on each of his next 1,000 passes, he will have a lower percentage of intercepted passes than Nathan Peterman still. So that's how bad Nathan Peterman is. So I feel we've railed on Peterman for a long time. So unless anyone had something to add about that, let's talk about some positive performances, Scott, and get on to this game's 3 stars.
Sure, we can do that. Let's start with our honorable mentions, as we always do. This one, obviously, a bit of a defensive flavor to this week's this day. Excuse me, that's your segment, Paul.
Yes, this day in Bill's 3 stars.
Yeah, exactly. This defender on the Bills had a pretty good day, and his name was. And I feel like he's made it honorable mention at least once or twice this year. I think he got on the stars at one point. Jerry Hughes, I think, had a tremendously good game for him. 1.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, part of 3 tackles, part of an overall defensive line effort. And I'll just go right into the 3rd star. 3rd star, Kyle Williams, 2 sacks. With another tackle mixed in there. Again, the Bills' defensive line led the defense for much of the day. Obviously, great play by the linebackers too. I'll put out there as well. Milano had a nice day as well. Edmonds had a pretty decent day. Obviously, Hyde and Poyer doing well. Poyer had a pick. Really a great day from everybody, pretty much on the defense, except for Philip Gaines, who obviously again, like you can quibble about the foul in the end zone, but at the same time, like Philip Gaines is the guy who was beat out by Vontae Davis, if I'm not mistaken, in game 2. So it's not like we were.
Although we could characterize it as Gaines outlost the job to Vontae Davis for week 2.
Exactly. So we knew we were kind of taking a risk by putting Philip Gaines in there. So getting all, can't be that surprised that something bad happens to him, or that he is involved in a bad play. But again, so Kyle, what do you want to say? He's 35 years old, right? 36 years old, and still.
Renzo Alexander's 35. I'll check on Kyle's age while you're going through your point.
Still making 3 stars. So even in a loss. So I think that shows again. And he was trucking people aside. He was getting in there. He was in on a lot of plays. So your second star goes to again, it was pretty obvious this is who I was going to pick, so I don't think anyone should be that he was on the list. JJ Watt, obviously, a Wisconsin. Again, it's my list. I do what I want. He's on the list.
Be number 1 today.
We no longer try to,
yeah, exactly. No,
you've beaten us.
Yeah, no. At this point, I don't really care what you think about the list anymore. So, yeah, I mean, he had a good game. He was definitely in on. He had 1 sack. He was definitely, pressured him at least 2 or 3. Pressured Allen and Peterman at least 2 or 3 other times. Obviously, a key part of the Houston defense. So, yeah, sure, he gets a second star. I don't care. Come at me. And then, yeah, exactly. And then your first star, I will give it to. Part of me wanted to give it to Joseph, but honestly, like, literally, he threw it right at him. Like, I mean, again, like, I have given it to guys in the past, but I don't think you get first star for just having it thrown right at you and running it into the end zone. I guess he beat him to the end zone, but he also, like, almost got Peterman, like, definitely tried to, like, hunt him down there. Like, he started high stepping to the end zone, and then Peterman, like, started running at him. And he's like, oh, I guess I ought to try now. So anyway, I will give the first star to Bernardrick McKinney, the linebacker on the Texans, who had a sack and 13 tackles. One thing, again, the Texans defense, I think the Texas defense certainly played pretty well. They certainly put themselves in a position. They obviously had plenty of pressures. They obviously forced some of those turnovers that the Bills did have. So I give it to him for filling up the stat sheet. And yeah, I mean, I think that's probably about it for 3 stars.
Or the 3 stars,
Or 3 stars.
We're a team of 3 stars.
I'm good at the English language.
If you'd given it to Joseph, I had a comment prepared, which I'm going to make anyway, about Larry Brown of the Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl MVP against the Steelers on the virtue of having Neil O'Donnell throw 2 balls directly to him, intercepted. And Brown parlayed that into a huge undeserved contract with another team. I think it was the Raiders, overspending at the time. So, yes, I think that was a very well put together 3 stars. So we've talked about, these 2 categories tie in very well together. We'll start with Josh Allen. So there's injury news on Josh Allen, and we're actually almost a half hour into the podcast. I'm surprised we didn't go more in depth into this already, but as of now, and I have TweetDeck open just in case something breaks, no pun intended. The latest on Josh Allen is that, in fact, he has a sprained UCL, and he will be missing weeks of the season. Could be this coming week, could be 2 weeks, could be up to 4 weeks, maybe even up to 6 weeks. But that as of right now, it does not look like he will need surgery and he will be back. However, we do not know anything for sure yet. And we have to think about what this means, the implications for this season and beyond. Even if it's not a surgery requiring injury, is it a nagging injury? If it's sprained and frayed, does it then become torn? He needs Tommy John down the road and misses a year and a half of football. So much could happen here. And we'll kick it back to Scott first on this one. Your concerns with the Allen injury and also what you think it means for the team, this year and beyond, knowing at least what we know to this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is hard. I mean, I feel like to a certain extent, I'm only concerned with what I've said before. I don't care about what anyone else has said before, including people on this podcast.
Of course.
So at the beginning of the season, I was very concerned about putting Josh Allen in. And then obviously the Vikings game, and he played okay in the Chargers game, well enough to the point where you could say like, well, clearly he's better than Peterman. So on some level, there's an argument to put him in. But and then the Vikings game happened, and obviously it was even better, and it was because like, well, okay, well, no, but he might be actually pretty good. And then the last 3 games, it's been pretty clear that actually he does have a lot of work that he needs to do. Whatever, whatever set of schemes, Dayball used in those first 2 or 3 games, in the second and third games, really to try and help him out, have been kind of figured out. And between the pressure and the line and everything else going on with Allen, it's too much. The offense wasn't moving. Nothing was really happening there. So I've kind of gone back and forth about whether or not it was worth it to keep him in there, because again, I understand like at this point, to a certain extent, the ship has sailed because we put him in as the starter. He's clearly better than, he was at least somewhat more competent than Peterman, and you needed to keep the team you needed to have a third option, and clearly no one thought about signing a rookie freaking veteran until a week ago. So at the same time, like, this was the risk, was he was going to get injured, and obviously he can still do some things when he's injured. He can still watch tape. He can still go to practice. Obviously I don't, he can work on his footwork a little bit, but I don't think you can really work on your footwork that much unless you're actually going through the motion of throwing as well to ingrain it into your muscle memory the same way that you would your regular throwing regime. So functionally, he's missing all of this practice time, which is really the thing that you're going to learn probably the most from. Like, you learn something from the games. You certainly learn how to deal with the pressure of the game. You learn how to, deal with a defense that's actually trying to read you, but you learn plenty of things in practice too. And he's missing all of that as well. And it's very frustrating because there is so much of this season that has been wrapped into this now. Like, if we didn't quite start the season this way, like, admittedly, like, we thought that plenty of this season was going to be about what happened with Josh Allen, but there were other stories, especially after the first week when it's like, what's happening with the defense? Is this defense any good? Turns out the defense is pretty good. What's going to go on with the offensive line? It's pretty terrible. We figured that out. But so now with those kind of things figured out, the rest of the season was going to be about Allen and how much he could learn, whether we could figure out what we're going to know about him. And so not only from his developmental perspective, but also what the Bills learned about him, now we're going to miss those 2 things. So it's frustrating. I don't want to do too much second guessing, even if that's the point of the entire podcast on some level, about whether or not he should have stayed in for this long. I don't know if you could have seriously said, like, he's not getting any better, we have to pull him out. I don't think that line of argument really holds up either. So I guess it's just unfortunate. I don't know if I'm willing to like throw everybody under the bus and blame this on them. I kind of want to, because obviously I have thoughts on McDermott and Bean anyway, but I don't know if I'm quite there yet.
You sounded like you came to a natural pausing point, so I will jump in. I think that I'm willing to play the blame game. I mean, I've already sort of pointed out that I feel like they talked about wanting veteran presence in there for him to be a teacher to Josh Allen, and that's why we signed Derek Anderson. Well, like, that was the case in week 2 and in week 1 and in week 3 and 4. And, so I only sort of believe it so much. I know that originally, like, the scuttlebutt in the week leading up to this game was like, were they thinking about getting Derek Anderson ready to play a game because they were feeling like Allen wasn't really taking them forward and that he might learn better from watching, and it just was a matter of Nate Peterman wasn't really the guy to sort of learn from. I mean, this is, as I said before, all of their chickens coming home to roost. The stat that I'd like to just share with everyone that I tweeted out during the podcast under the Buffalo Bills Maybe Next Year handle, there are 20 individual quarterbacks that have more passing yards than the Bills have total yards this year. The Bills have 1,335 yards. And if you add Russell Wilson's rushing yards to his passing total, he gets to 1,370. This offense is abysmal. So a quick shout out to Calvin Benjamin, who didn't feel like he needed to run a couple of extra routes before practice with his quarterback who was learning. I'd be happy to trade or cut him as well. But I generally agree with Scott that, like, the point of this season was definitely going to be, what could we learn about Allen and what could Allen learn about the position? And that's all thrown out the window. And not only is that thrown out the window, but also it could be thrown out the window for next year, because if he ends up getting surgery, that's going to carry over into next year. And now we're talking about the year 2020, when a handful of their young talent, this is Paul's point, I'm going to let him speak to it more, begins to require more contract. And so I almost hope that I'll say this. I wasn't impressed with Josh Allen this week, and this was going to be the first week that I was sort of like going to say, yeah, I don't know. I'm no longer like, I feel like I'm not seeing any progress now. And I felt like, come on, 6 weeks is, I didn't want to bury him after week 1, and he's certainly better than I think some of the scouting reports made him out to be, but I wasn't seeing a whole lot. And so I was ready to start moving to the skeptical end on Josh Allen, as opposed to the neutral and optimistic, because, hey, I'm watching football anyway. If he's going to get surgery and be out, and we're going to have a good draft pick, like, I think honestly, the best thing that the regime could do would be to draft another quarterback and just be like, and just maybe we can all cross our fingers. And it turns out that this really was up to ownership, and they really did fall in love with this guy. And Brandon Beane can now turn around and say, that's not the quarterback we wanted. We never wanted a quarterback like that. Please let us draft the quarterback this time. That's obviously a pipe dream. I don't know. It's annoying. I agree with Jerry Hughes. The stupid freaking offense. If you wanted this kind of offense, you should have just kept Tyrod Taylor. So I don't know. The whole thing is a shit show, and I still maintain that Josh Allen isn't the worst part of the offense, or wasn't, but he wasn't looking particularly great. And when you look at their total offense stats, it really points out that, like, their running game isn't there either, and that we are in a different universe than how the rest of the NFL treats passing. Like, we are literally, I don't know, we're in the championship. We're in the Champions League, and everybody else is in the Premier League. We are just fucking AHL. It's 1976, and we just are not with it. And there's no indication to me that anybody gives a shit about being in the 21st century with this football team with regards to passing.
Yeah, Stephen and Tom, Bills are looking.
Oh, are you getting Zuling?
Yeah.
All right. I will quickly.
I have
yeah, Scott can give us a point while Paul
Paul rejoins us in live in progress. I think.
Oh, and then you cut out. That's great. Well, I'm here, and until I can hear from Scott again, I'll just continue to rail against the Bills. Let me quickly get to Greg's comment on Facebook. Oh, there you go. You're back. Let me read Greg's comment on Facebook, because I feel like it's a good one. This might be a good time to reread a classic from the Stoics, perhaps Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, perhaps something about bearing the vicissitudes that life brings, ? And I agree that reading is always a good idea.
Yes. No, I agree as well. I think what I was going to say was, it's interesting because I feel like 2 weeks ago you might have been right that Josh Allen wasn't the worst part of the offense. I'm not sure I would have said that yesterday. I mean, obviously, like, Peterman coming in was the worst part of the offense, but before that, like, we actually did run the ball okay. Like McCoy had a couple decent runs there. Like, we were averaging 4.5 yards on the ground. It wasn't great, certainly, but it was the way that we run the Titans game was just running the ball 30 times, and at 4 yards of carry, we managed to scrape together 240 yards of total offense, and that was enough. I'm thinking that actually Allen was kind of the worst part of the offense on Sunday. And again, I get your point. Like, maybe that's not enough of a reason to, like, completely throw out the baby with the bathwater yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did kind of enact the Kirk Cousins Robert Griffin plan that the Redskins did, a couple of years back, when they drafted Cousins in the 3rd round, the same year that they drafted Griffin in the 1st. And obviously, Griffin did okay for the first year, but then he got injured at the end, and then he never really came back to life. And Cousins ended up being the guy who turned into things. I think that might have been their theory with Peterman, maybe he was the diamond in the rough here, but actually he's just a lump of coal. So.
I think he's McDermott's long lost son, and he's going to take the penalty kicks as long as his dad is coaching.
That would make sense. That would be like Austin Prohl, right? Because that's the son of Ricky Prohl.
Yeah, son of Ricky Prohl. Yep.
Right. Anyway, we have Paul back, so please.
Yes. Yeah, when I was just thinking the Jets tried a similar approach with Petty and Hackenberg, and it didn't work out. But yeah, maybe it'll be the Griffith-Cousins approach that will work. But what this topic transitions into very nicely is we always talk about the Bills in terms of the future and how the future is really bright for this team with all the young talent. But this is a newsflash. We talk about whether Josh Allen is the solution or not, and the implications of his injury. And yes, he was 2-2 as a starter before he got this injury, but you didn't see a lot of progress, which tended to be the frustrating thing. So if he's injured for a while, or if he's just injured for a short time and comes back, the timeline now has to be sped up for there to be progress for this team, because as much as we talk about, all this new cap space next year, can spend on free agents, can do this, can do that. In 2020, which is the first season we kind of look at and think could be a championship contending team if they approach the next two off seasons right. In the final year of their contracts will be Trent Murphy, Jordan Poyer, Zay Jones, Deion Dawkins, Matt Milano. Those are just to name a few. So if you look at the entirety, I will read the entire list of Bills who are under contract for 2021. Don't worry, this will take about 5 seconds. Star Lutulele, Hyde, Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, Harrison Phillips, Teron Johnson, Ciaran Neal, Wyatt Teller, and Ray McLeod. So this window could be closing very quickly. They have a very good defense right now. You look at Trey White, you look at Matt Milano, you have, Kyle Williams and Lorenzo Alexander as the KG veterans, if you will. You have, so many really talented players on this defense. And yet, unless you use some of this money next offseason to extend guys like White and Milano only 2 years into their contracts, maybe they do that, and then you figure out ways to extend Poyer and whatnot. This window is going to close very, very quickly for the Bills. And, I know I had a bunch of names on the agenda, which I've, of course, since.
I can repaste them for you. Hold on. Just like we did with Winfield, Clement, Spikes, Fletcher, Sam Adams, Pat Williams, McGee, Schobel, etc.
Yep, and the etc. I added to that list. Thank you, Frank. We added Angela Crowell, Troy Vincent, Lawyer Malloy, good contributing players, if not stars. Those players were all on the defense within the same 3-year span, or so 3 to 4 year span, some interchangeably with, Malloy and Vincent coming in shortly after Winfield departed and so forth. But they had such a talented defense. But when you're running an offense onto the field every week and saying, we're going to wait for J.P. Lossman to develop. And yes, Eric Moulds is getting old, but we have Lee Evans and no one behind him because we have Josh Reed. On our line, we have Benny Anderson and Trey Teague and Chris Valario, and this new Mike Williams tackle will be good. And you have all these players that you're banking on, and they don't develop and you waste your time. All of a sudden, you get a stretch of time where you have a very good defense and you go 7-9 every damn year because you've done nothing to build the offense. And the Bills' window, if they do not, in terms of having cost-controlled talent, that is only secured right now through 2020. And I just wanted to make that point. I hope people don't lose sight of is there is some urgency for Allen to develop, for him to recover from this injury, if the Bills are trying to build up for long-term success. And Frank, I don't know if you had any kind of thoughts to that point as well.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I don't know if you heard it, but I had briefly mentioned it before. Mm-hmm. I think that gets to one of the Twitter questions I want to bring in too, because Matt asks, or not Matt, BJ asks, first of all, would the Bills have been better off with hiring Anthony Lynn? He says they would. And we can talk about that. But his says, why does this cycle of good defense, bad offense, bad defense continue to happen? And I think this is exactly it. It's because you get a coach that's good at building one of the things, and you infuse the talent on that side, and then the window closes and nothing good happens and everybody gets fired. And then the next guy comes in and he builds something and it sort of switches. And so you're constantly, it's almost like the boy with the finger in the dam, right? Like like when you plug one and then it springs out somewhere else, and that's what it is. And so I think it cycles because of exactly this, because you can't stabilize a particular end of the field And the only truly stabilizing thing you can do is get a really great quarterback. Defenses are kind of notoriously hard to maintain, and offensive talent likes to get paid just as much. So, I think that sort of answers the question. And I think that you're right. I'm looking at this and I feel like they've already missed their window. I feel like this is already a window that's over. Scott.
I mean, I think, I mean, I think the theory is, either you get lucky with a good quarterback or, like a championship level quarterback, or
Right.
at least you can, if you get you hit on a couple good draft picks in a row when the talent level, when they're at a more affordable numbers because of the cap structures for the draft picks are all kind of slotted. So by definition, you can only pay them so much. If you can get a couple good there, then you can build up enough general level talent on the team that you can kind of be dangerous to a certain extent. I think that's kind of where Jacksonville is like they were bad enough for long enough that they actually did hit on a couple of their draft picks in a row. Then they went out and signed some talent and actually really put together a pretty good defense. But again, your window is really only going to be 2 or 3 years before everything kind of does fall apart. And I think, the thing to play out Frank's point a little further too is part of the problem is also just the to be fair, the win now kind of atmosphere of the NFL of like 2 to 3 years and you're done, because you can take 2 or 3 years. And I feel like one of the things that would happen is like you'd hire a defensive coach because the defense was bad. He would spend 2 or 3 years fixing the defense. By the time he did that, the offense had gotten worse and the defense maybe wasn't quite there yet, but he got fired. Then the offensive guy would come in and he'd have a bunch of good defensive players, but no good offensive players. And I think that's just to a certain extent a result of the cap. So I think, I mean, it's the quarterback is the shortcut. Everything else is kind of just luck, unfortunately.
I think just to piggyback on that, if you look at a team like Seattle that does have a good quarterback, they really haven't been into the last couple of years. I mean, their window was kind of a couple of years. It's not that they can't get back into it, and they're in a better position to do so because they have a good quarterback. But even teams like, I mean, New England and Pittsburgh are like the ones that are always in it, and even then, they're not like, they haven't won it every year. That's for sure.
Pittsburgh can be up and down. Same with Green Bay. Some years they're in it, but even other years,
Atlanta,
they're 8-8. Yeah, Atlanta, for example.
So I mean, even having a good quarterback keeps you in the conversation longer unless you have basically Tom Brady or a handful of other people.
It's not a guarantee though.
Right. No, it's not.
Right. Philip Rivers in San Diego or in Los Angeles is a good example. I don't think they've made the playoffs in about 4 or 5 years, and they have still a really good quarterback in Rivers.
Yeah.
So and that's the danger you take going through this cycle. And you guys both point out great parts of this process and why it's so difficult to maintain a winner. New England tends to be the exception, I think, also because they have great coaching, but do this on maybe next New England Patriots podcast, which we'll never do. So that was a great Twitter question by B. Jenks. We'll go right into the Twitter questions, and Scott can pull up the Facebook questions, or Frank can pull up the Facebook questions.
Oh, I pulled it up, and it was only the one comment, and I've already read it while you were off I used it to kill time while you were reloading.
That was a good decision. So we answered B. Jenks, Matt Caruso, Peterman Anderson, or Frank Reich. Any chance he changes sides on Sunday, like Coffee Black at the end of Semi-Pro? Wow, I'd forgotten Semi-Pro. Remember that movie?
Yes.
Yes. They invent the LU.
Andre 3000, who was Coffee Black?
Yes, it was Andre 3000.
Yeah, I saw that at the theater way back when. It would be great.
Right? Jackie Moon, I'm a wrestler bear.
Frank Reich would be, he's this close to being the second most tenured quarterback on the Bills roster. If he does that, who would be active Sunday? Assuming Anderson, since he's only been with the team for a week. So yeah, it's an ugly situation. Orlando asked a few questions. He said, "So, are you saying our offense is atrocious?" Yeah, I think we've already addressed that one.
Yeah.
The Bills picked the wrong Josh. Everything about Allen from college said he would be a horrendous QB. McDermott and Bean went gutalytics. They got him QB rather than by the numbers. Sorry to say, I'll be looking for a QB all over again. And, we addressed that in a good amount of detail as well, and we still don't know the answer. But, yeah, it's not looking great at this point because we haven't seen the progress or the real development we wanted. And unless they can work magic and take this unique physical specimen and turn him into a good NFL quarterback, you're exactly right, would be starting all over again. So, sorry, I'm just reading jokes.
Yeah, me too. I just saw that. That was good, Scott. To answer the BJ's first part of the question,
Yeah.
I think that they would be better off with Anthony Lynn, but I also think McDermott would be better off if he had, Philip Rivers a quarterback. So,
Yeah.
6 of one, half dozen of the other. Hard to say exactly what the deal is there.
Yeah, I think they'd be better with Lynn too, but I don't think they'd be dramatically. I don't think they'd be 5-0 with him. Right?
I think the biggest thing that I would think about with Lynn, I mean, and I won't say that McDermott doesn't have some value as a coach, because I think he clearly does. Like, the defense has managed to put some things together here, but at least with Lynn, he would have had a bit more familiarity with all the personnel, and he maybe would have not done the complete roster churn that we've had to go through in the last years. And maybe that puts us in a little better position just in terms of the depth.
Do you think if we're having this season last year, we're nearly as down? It's because there was success, right? Like, if we're having this season last year, it's like, okay, fuck it. We're out of it.
No, I think it's because I think the biggest thing for me is how they're mishandling this whole Allen Peterman quarterback.
Yeah, they've blown this big. You're right.
Yeah, and I feel like that would be bothering me no matter what season this was, or what we did last year, like, to a certain extent.
I think I might agree with that. Okay, sorry. Thank you. That was my question from Twitter.
All right, and then Orlando just talked about Allen's accuracy, which we addressed as well. So thank you to everyone on Facebook and Twitter. It was a very quiet first half on Twitter on the feed on Sunday, and then the second half, and at the end of that game, things went crazy. And also a shout out to Lorenzo Alexander, who actually liked a random joke I made, and it wasn't my best joke. Not that that's there really is a best joke, but he just made a spectacular play, and I noted 84-year-old Lorenzo Alexander remains one of the Bills' top defenders because he's, of course, like 35. 24 likes. So thank you, Lorenzo, for taking my one random bad joke and making it go the B-Bills MNY version of viral. So
hope he's enjoying the show, because obviously he's a big fan of
He's a big listener of the show, but it was great to hear from Lorax, as they call him, and I promise, we'll try to interact a little bit more with our friends from the team, our Bills captains. We'll see if we can get LaShawn to say something to him.
If he had run that interception back for a touchdown, he would have made 3 stars. Sorry, Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Maybe won the game, but yeah. Anyway,
I mean,
so much traffic
here, friend.
All right, so I'm you guys ready for some This Day in Bills headline/history?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. All right, awesome. I have closed many of the games I had open, which is you guys probably saw me doing when I had my camera accidentally left on, because I was trying to minimize the amount of bandwidth I'm using here. But still, we have, you will have your chance, Scott, at the end to make a guess about one specific player. So get your brain flowing.
Okay.
Let's go over 9 other quicker questions and see who can guess these correct answers. So we'll go back to 2015. Headline is, blank relishes his second chance with Bills. And he says, it's unbelievable, man. He said of Rex Ryan's support. They just took me in, and it's like we never lost a beat since we was at the Jets together. So it's been great. It's been a blessing having him and how he took me in so quickly. So 2015 with Rex Ryan with the Jets.
I want to say
linebacker.
I want to say it was a defensive player and an older player, and I can't think of who it is. Obviously not a quarterback or a lineman. Can't think of a wide receiver.
I'm gonna say I want to say it's David Harris, but it's not David Harris because he was never on the Bills.
I want to say it's Cromartie, but he was also never on the Bills.
So the guessing might be winding down. I will give you the hint that will make you both get it, even if you don't remember the name off the top of your head. If he knew you couldn't guess his name, he might punch you in the face.
Oh, Ike Campanelli.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Ike, I don't want to. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. 2014, this player, a Buffalo-born wide receiver, says agent did his job asking about a trade. It was a guy who said, when I go through practice all week long and I find out Saturday I'm not playing, it was a big shock to everybody. My agent just did his job looking for a trade. I'm still here. It's my hometown, playing for the team I want to play for.
2014, huh?
2014, Buffalo-born wide receiver.
Yeah. What's his name?
David Nelson?
No.
No, he's not
It's
Buffalo
like-
born.
It was like Brown, like Chad Brown or something. I want to say. Sounds like a name of a guy.
Yeah, let's go with Chad Michael Brown.
Now, Scott? What's your default rule for what name you should guess in these situations when you don't have a name?
Oh, Mike Williams.
Williams, yeah, just guess Williams. Mike Williams is the correct. Okay, 2013. After the Bills pick up this quarterback, he says, "I'm ready to start digging into the playbook." Fun fact: he never played a snap for the Bills, though the game the three of us went to together, the fans behind us were chanting for him after Jeff.
Matt Flynn.
Matt Flynn.
Yeah.
Very good.
Put in Flynn.
All right, we're going to have a theme here. We're going to go to a 2011 game where the Bills lose to the Giants 27-24. They were, 4-1 going into the game. This Buffalo-born wide receiver scored his only career touchdown in this game.
Mike Williams.
TJ Oshie.
TJ Oshie?
Little TJ Oshie, the Caps. It was
TJ Yates?
It is presidential themed, and that the last name is a multiple president, Roosevelt. Naaman Roosevelt. Got his own. This was the game where Fred Jackson had an 80-yard weaving run for a touchdown, and Fitz for the 2 late interceptions. It was a painful game. In 2016, that the Bills had also played a game on this day that they won 45-16 over the 49ers. Can you name any wide receiver that caught a pass in this game who also caught a pass for the opposing team at some point during their career?
Jerry Rice?
Marquise Goodwin?
Steve Johnson
is an answer. Marquise caught 2 passes for the 49ers, and his caught passes as well for Buffalo. And then we have Jerry
Johnson
was one answer you could have given. And then you also could have said, I would have accepted Rod Streeter. Shout out to Rod as well. Broke his neck, but he's going to be okay. Not paralyzed or anything like that. Despite the sirens going by.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Apparently they're going to save him right now. Right.
As annoying when I'm the one talking, I can't mute it when the sirens go by. So I hope everyone enjoys that. And, that's not a sound effect. All right. 2008. Defensive tackle blank back with Bills after failing physical. He says, I don't think anything I say is going to lead to anything positive.
Was that John McCargo?
It was John McCargo.
Yeah.
And then had to be returned.
McCargo. Brown's
Yep.
McCargo blog update.
Oh, so I remember that we exchanged texts about that back in the
Yes.
2007, guess the Bills game. Warner Home Video, the National Football League, and NFL Films announced through a press release they will release 2 must-have titles this holiday season of the NFL's greatest games. One featuring the 1985 Bears, and another featuring this Bills game. Which Bills game got the National Football League greatest games treatment?
Oh, it's got to be Bills Oilers.
Bills Oilers, very good.
Yeah.
All right, 2004. Bills activate blank off practice squad. Hint, it's our 3rd Buffalo-born wide receiver of the day. Says he's a good inside guy and has good instincts, said Coach Mike Mularkey.
Paul Demansky.
That is correct. You will never guess this, so unless Scott has a guess, I'm just going to chime in with the answer, which is
Omar Batten.
that could be right. We will never know. No, it's Drew Haddad. It's two University of Buffalo guys who played for.
I remember Drew Haddad. Okay.
Yeah, we actually played for the Colts for a while too. Once the Bills cut him, so he did have an NFL career after the Bills. Also, what's hilarious is this week in 2004, the game being previewed in the headlines was the 0-5 Dolphins against the 0-4 Bills. And the Bills, of course, would finish that year 9-7 and missed the playoffs only because that loss against the Steelers. I forgot that.
Also because of the 0-4 start. Yeah. But yes.
9-2 after that, before that Steelers loss. I forgot they had a stretch where they won 9 of 11. That was crazy.
That was the cheeseburger year.
Yes. All right, 2002, blank named AFC Offensive Player of the Week in road victory against Texans.
Travis Henry.
Very good, friend.
Yeah, good guess by me.
On fire today.
I was going to say Travis Henry.
I'll give Scott the point then.
Scott gets points because he was going to say it.
Yes.
That's how it works in this world.
Life is fair, kids, just so you know.
Yep.
All right, so we have one more minor one and then the master trivia question. 2000, this is the tough one. Blanks TD, a lineman's dream. The Bills' second touchdown was bizarre as running back Jonathan Linton fumbled into the end zone when hit by former Buffalo safety Mike Dumas, with center blank recovering. That's the first touchdown I've scored since I was in 6th grade and caught a long bomb in the backyard, he said. All my life, I was doomed to be an offensive lineman and not touch the football unless I hiked it. Can you name the Bills center? We did Dusty Ziegler last week, and I think one of you might have guessed this guy, who was the center the next year after Ziegler left.
Oh, Scott guessed it. Trey Teague.
Teague was a good guess, but nope, it was different guy who came up. I'll give you the first name, Jerry
Hughes.
Ostrowski.
Jerry Falwell.
Ostrowski, there we go. Scott got Ostrowski. Well done.
O'Connell.
Yeah. Right. So that was the headlines for this day. We're going to go back to one more game. This is the master trivia question. So this is all the other answers don't matter. So if Scott gets this right, he still beats Frank, even though Frank got most of these right. So go back to 2005, Bills versus Jets. Bills were, I think, like a 7.5 point favorite. They were a favorite in this. Maybe it was only a 3-point favorite. I've had to close all my windows again due to the Zuling. But starting lineman during this Bills victory had 2 holding calls. He would, in the near future, then be replaced in the starting lineup by a guy who started this game at tight end and actually caught a pass. So can you name this Bills lineman who eventually lost his job to the person who started tight end, who was the starting tight end during this game?
Please give me the year one more time.
2005, the first year we watched games together. So we watched this victory.
I'm going to say Jonas Jennings.
Jonas, yes.
That's a good guess. I'm going to say... Yeah, Robert Royal's not a lineman. But I'll say him anyway because he might have started tight end and then pushed into duty. But it's
wait, are we trying to get the guy that the tight end eventually replaced?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was trying to get the tight end.
Yeah, because I assume the tight end is Peters, right?
Yes, I will give Scott gets credit for that. Tight end was Jason Peters, who was targeted twice in this game and caught a pass for 4 yards.
How about Langston Walker? He was after. Okay, well, I feel like I've named a lineman now at least, so that's good.
I'll sit on Langston Walker.
I'll just stay there.
I'll stay.
I'll push.
Hopefully, I don't zool while Googling this guy. He'd started 3 years with the Bears, mainly at guard spots, then moved to left tackle with the Bills, then moved to left guard after he failed to left tackle with the Bills in 2006, and then 2009 he started for the Arizona Cardinals as left tackle, 16 games.
Was it Valerial?
Valerial, you're getting some great guesses in because these are all guys who played on this. In fact, these are guys who started in the lineup that day. Trey Teague started that day. Chris Valerial started that day.
Was it Mike Williams?
It was not Mike Williams, who also started that day.
I got the rest of the line.
The only one
you named 4 of the 5 people on this line. This is amazing.
These are the 2 linemen you haven't. The only 2 linemen you haven't guessed who started this game were Benny Anderson and the correct answer.
Benny Anderson. Okay.
Benny Hill.
Who was the? God, this is gonna annoy me. I have a whole fake answer ready.
Had a great career. 106 starts in his career. So.
Oh, I don't. I can't.
Reuben Brown.
Nah,
that's way too. I don't know.
He's left guard. He was older.
Yeah.
I Marquita Lafayette. That was my best.
Oh, it's a good one.
You have the first letter of the first name correct. It is the Mike de Lafayette Gandy.
Mike Gandy.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Right.
Funny, he would never been. I wouldn't have even come close to guessing him.
Yeah.
30. He started every game for the Bills for 2 years. He still started every game for the Cardinals for the next 3 years. So
I don't remember him at all.
That's kind of true average right there. When you start 106 games and you're on the top of no one's mind.
Completely forgettable. Yeah, exactly.
So that was this day.
Gandy.
Yeah, that was this day and Bills headlines in history. And I think we're just at the 65-minute mark or so. So we will go right into the previews and predictions. I think it started with Scott last time. So Frank, impressions of the Bills Colts game. I will look up the spread quickly, and if the Colts aren't favored, there's something wrong in the world. 6.5. The terrible Colts by 6.5. But unlike last week, where I thought the 10-point spread was ridiculous, this one at least makes sense to me.
Yeah, and they I think that the thing that to keep in mind about the game is the Bills pass rush has kind of gotten good, and the Colts are really an only passing game, but the problem is the Colts are a good passing game, and they are a much better passing game than the Texans, really. And so even though they falter in other places, and if we had competent quarterback play, like this is a game where if Josh Allen was playing and like he wasn't great, but like he wasn't gonna barf all over his shoes, maybe the Bills would have a chance. If they could play that control football, this one's going to get away from them. I predict a game that will start well for the Bills on defense. They will ultimately be worn down. And by the end of the week, everybody who's of value on this team will, in fact, want to be on another team. And so I think that, I mean, to me, this is a game that gets out of hand quickly. I think this is like a 24-6 kind of football game. I don't think the Bills get shut out, but I would not be surprised if they didn't score a touchdown. And there you go. Now this, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really want to say that changes if Derek Anderson is in the game or something. And you know what? I would probably say that for all his faults, I think Dable would maybe come up with a fun game plan for I don't have a quarterback. Like that seems to be like his Alabama roots, right? Like we don't really have a quarterback, but we're gonna run like hell and win this game anyway. So maybe he'll come up with a good game plan, but I don't see a touchdown necessarily. And even if Nate Peterman does throw one, I imagine he'll throw 3 picks. Yeah, I'll stick with my 24-6.
I will say that this game is one that
you cut out at the critical moment. Scott,
come back, Scott.
Come back.
We know what it's do. There he is.
Okay, you were saying this is you were like, I think this is a game the Bills will
win.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Why? Justify.
Okay, so this is why I think the Bills will win. In their last couple games, the Colts have given up 42, 38, 37, and 20 points. And then also they gave up 34 to Cincy in the first couple weeks. Now, admittedly, our offense is not as good as the Bengals, as anyone. As it's barely an NFL offense.
In the 2004 Dolphins, Scott. So you take that back. We know one offense that this offense is better than.
I think some of that might have to do with some of the teams that we are playing who have not had terrible defenses. I just feel like this one's got a little bit of a, maybe record. T.Y. Hilton didn't play for them against the Jets on Sunday. I think, there's not, obviously Andrew Luck's a perfectly good quarterback. I just don't know who else is like playing for them at this point. Like Eric Ebron, the tight end. Okay, that's fine. Maybe Hilton's healthy enough, but I'm not sure. But even then, like Tre'Davious is probably going to be able to handle him. At least not, get completely.
I think they got Edgar and James and Paul Justin,
Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison coming back.
Marvin Harrison and
the slot guy
Johnny
that they
Biden
had.
is their backup, if I remember. So yeah.
And they don't have anybody on defense who's really going to scare you other than maybe Malik Hooker. So I think that this is a game that the Bills can win. I don't want to get into a shootout with them because obviously that's not going to end well because we, again, don't have an offense. But I could see a way that we could like get 2 or 3 turnovers and like LaShawn McCoy has like a good LaShawn McCoy game where he goes for like 140 total yards and 2 touchdowns and the Bills win like 23-21 or something like that. I could see something like that happening. I feel like that's reasonable.
That was inspiring when Scott picks the Bills to win in a game that they're a huge underdog. So
I have to laugh a little, Scott. I'm sorry, but you also, in fact, are the person who's most right. So perhaps my laughter will be, I will be hoisted on my own laughter petard. But I don't know, man. 21 points.
Yeah, I'm doing a combo pick. Go ahead. Sorry, Frank.
I can't. Have they scored 21 points over the last 2 games? Like, I guess so. But
I mean, I would say with the defense,
I think they've scored
with
22
2 or 3 turnovers,
so, yeah, or 23. So they have, to answer your question.
yeah, I think it's doable.
okay.
So,
That'll be
isn't
good,
the
because
Great Wall of
my wife is from
Indianapolis.
Indiana, and my wife's family is Colt fans. And
Yeah,
so
stick it to them.
they'll realize on Sunday that they're playing the Bills, and they'll be like, "Oh, Frank's a Bills fan," and then I'll get all like the late teasing texts. Then, and I'll have to be like, I honestly don't care what the hell happens in this game anymore, because everything is on fire.
Between
And so,
2 and 4 Bills and 1 and 5 Colts isn't lighting up your Sunday.
no, it's not. And so, but anyway, anyway.
Yeah, I think this is this Colts offense, though. Scott's right; they don't have a lot of players, but I can off memory. I'm not looking this up. Name the Colts starting offense in Tecmo's Super Bowl, and it's a lot better than that offense, which I think was Jeff George starting with Trudeau back up, and then
Andre Rison.
No, he was with the Falcons.
With the Falcons at that point already. Okay.
Would have been Albert Bentley and Ivy Joe Hunter in the backfield, because Eric Dickerson pulled out in non-Tecmo Super Bowl. And then receiver was Bill Brooks and Jesse Hester, with Clarence Verdun as the return guy, and your tight end was Pat Beach. That's about what the Bills' offense is now.
Yes.
So that's the unfortunate situation we're in. I think the Colts just have a little more talent. I agree with the turnovers that Scott brought up. I agree that this defense is in good shape. I think whether you start Derek Anderson or Nate Peterman is like, do you want to start this fold-out couch or this futon at quarterback? I think, where the result's going to be largely the same. I just don't think they're going to be able to put together a lot of points, even with great field position. The optimist in me does think that even though Anderson doesn't know the playbook like Peterman and Allen, because he hasn't been there since the start of the year, he has a better vast knowledge of what plays can be run during an NFL game with his experience. So I hope they go the Anderson route. There's also a sense they could lose the locker room if they start Peterman after his performance last week. But I'm still going to say the Colts are just in a better position to win this game. I'm going to say Indianapolis. I think the defense holds up. I think they eventually, fold a little bit. I'm going to say 20 to 16. I'm going to give the Bills 16 points, maybe a touchdown and 3 field goals. So, yeah. So that is, that's our pod for this week. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
No, just tell the people where they can find us.
I would love to. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/BBillsMNY. You can find us on Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/BBillsMNY. You can download us on iTunes. You can also find this podcast on the Anchor app. Well, we do not use them to podcast anymore. We do, in fact, host our pods there for now. We'll see. You can find our archives over at the old WordPress page. Find that out. You can Google Buffalo Bills podcast. We haven't done this in a while.
Yeah, where are we in the rankings?
Yeah, let's see. I'm sure I would guess we're on page 2 at this point, because everyone else is going to another provider that's bumping them up the page. So we're way toward the bottom of page 2 on mine. So, the last one on page 2. So don't do that, because you're going to get on a lot of other podcasts before ours. So don't Google us. Do all the other things we mentioned. And until next week when we report on the Colts game, this has been Paul,
Scott,
and Frank.
See everyone later.